Playing the victim of Putin, Germany is pushed to self-destruction. Some call it suicide. This is translated for you from Associated France Press, Fabrici Cofrini, by Peter Akopov. Is Germany now at least trying to understand what cornered the Anglo-Saxons have driven them into by undermining Nord Stream? And again, let's remember that a very strange worldwide silence has befallen the earth concerning Nord Stream and the who did it thing. Nobody, no politician is asking or commenting about this. No journalist is even touching this. Nowhere. Why is this happening? Now, yes, of course, a part of the public is increasingly worried that Germany has no room for maneuver, especially in the east, except to walk the very ever-narrowing corridor of the ever-growing conflict with Russia over Ukraine. But the German elites still support the line of so-called Atlantic solidarity, that is, agreeing with the collective West should have a unified position vis-à-vis Russia. The domestic economic problems will of course increase the popularity of the anti-elite forces, the AfD and the left. These are the German parties. But in general, the ruling elites does not yet feel threatened and is ready to face even mass protests. The over-reliance on the Anglo-Saxons certainly weighs on even the staunchest Atlanticists, including even some in the Green leadership. But no one in the German leadership is considering any alternative to the current course. The best Chancellor Scholz can do is fend off accusations of insufficient aid to Ukraine made by the opposition CDU, among others. But this is all in an international political discussion. German military aid to Ukraine is not particularly necessary for the Atlanticists. The Americans have taken over the main supply of the Ukrainian military anyway, but it's very important for the US to keep Germany in line, and they do not have much faith in the credibility of the German elite, judging by the fact that they have continued to undermine the Nord Stream gas pipelines from Russia to Europe, Germany in particular. Why? Because despite all the German elites that were trained after World War II, some of them still have historical memory and ambitions, and these aspirations are linked to the project of a united Europe, the European Union. And as we know, if you see the video before this one, the European Union is a joke. They're traitors, cowards, call them whatever you will. They're full of hot air when they speak, and there's no action behind anything. They can't protect their borders or territories. Please watch the video before this one, the destruction of Europe. So these aspirations are linked to the project of the United Europe, the main German task of the last decades, and if we look deeper, then of the centuries. The Germans need a united Europe, but the Anglo-Saxons are only willing to tolerate it under their control. In other words, if Washington has the key to Germany, then so be it. The main, but by no means the only key to Europe is in Berlin. But there is a very big danger in this construction. There is no guarantee that at this point the German elites will not miraculously want to break free from overseas control, and then a strong united Europe will demand equal rights in relations with the Anglo-Saxons. To rule out such an eventuality, Europe's freedom of movement must be severely curtailed, that is, to confront Russia and safely rule out even the hypothetical possibility of a resumption of serious economic corruption or cooperation between the old world and Russia. The old world meaning the old continent of Europe. The battle for Ukraine was the perfect opportunity for this, and although Germany has long tried to avoid a complete break with Russia, it has now come close to it. Moreover, as if anticipating the inevitable increase in the hesitation of the German elites before the final step in this direction, it's now being pushed even further. Berlin is called upon to declare war on Russia and lead it, a geopolitical war that changes nothing. This is exactly the topic of the article. Putin's real target for war is not Ukraine, but Germany. Wow! Wow. Putin's real target for war is not Ukraine but Germany. Pushing yesterday in Focus, its author is not some fringe or primitive anti-Atlanticist propagandist. Gabor Steingart is one of the most important German journalists, former editor-in-chief of Handelsblatt, and immediately sets the scene. He says, everyone is only talking about the fighting in Ukraine, but it sounds very innocent, as if we are being blindsided by something terrible. In fact, Putin is at war against Western Europe, and more specifically against Germany, end quote. So this is what the German journalist said. Okay? Everyone is blindsided by something terrible. In fact, Putin is at war against Western Europe, and more specifically against Germany. Yes, that's it. Watch your hands. Since Putin's goal is to restore Russia's power by weakening Western Europe, that means he's targeting Germany, because anyone who wants to weaken Western Europe must first immobilize main economic engine of the EU, which is Germany. Let's allow it. But Putin has been emphasizing for years he regrets that European countries have limited their sovereignty in favor of the USA. That is, the Russian president has always suggested that Europe, and especially Germany, defend its interests. Instead, Europe allowed itself to be used by the Anglo-Saxons to fight Russia over the Ukraine, and gradually the suspicion in Moscow was strengthened that Europe was acting in this way not only because it was dependent on the US, but also because it had a vested interest in taking Ukraine, that is, redefining the borders of Russia and Europe. After February 24th, our suspicions were confirmed, and now Russia really wants to weaken Western Europe. But this is a response to Europe's challenge to us, to its call to defend Russia. Of course, we must now weaken Europe, not to subjugate it, but to wrest the Ukraine that was stolen from us, the Russians said. Understandably, Steingart, the German journalist, could not help but exchange cause and effect. After all, he has to explain the position of Putin, who declared a war on Germany. Explaining this, he lists 5 fronts on which the battle against Germany is being waged, and discovers that Germany is suffering losses on all of them. The first front is Ukraine itself. Here, however, it's not about the battle, but about Putin testing his readiness to enter the fray. The questions the state of which after 1945, the rejection of violence despite the Bundeswehr, and the current decision to rearm it is the silent basis of the life of society in Germany. Putin is depriving us, he said, of dividends of peaceful development, we so enjoy after the collapse of the Soviet Union. Olaf Scholz of Germany, with a $100 billion program to rearm the Bundeswehr, is not the inventor of the change of the era. We have been led into a terrible time by one man, and this man sits in the Kremlin, Vladimir Putin. That is, Putin is forcing the Germans to abandon pacifism, thereby causing them terrible mental anguish, because the foundation of modern German statehood is at stake. Terrible agony indeed. It's just not clear what the Germans should get involved in the Slavs fighting each other. That meaning Russians and Ukrainians. Why would the Germans want to get involved in the Slavs fighting each other? Because of the responsibility for a united Europe? But Ukraine is not and will never be part of Europe. Does Berlin really want to insist otherwise? Or is it black ingratitude to the Russians for the peaceful reunification of Germany? So now they will stop being pacifists for the sake of preventing Russia reunification? The second front is even more insidious. In this, Putin is depriving the cheap energy on which Germany's business model, based on the export of manufactured goods, has been based for decades. It's impossible to read this without tears. Quote, the fact that East Germany has managed to maintain its high industrial capacity despite high worker wages and a developed welfare state proves to be no achievement of our own. Sadly, it turned out that we owed our prosperity above all to the fossil fuel base called Russia. This is what ensured the beneficial German-Russian energy cooperation. By depriving industry of this energy base, Putin has targeted the entire German economy and is now driving it into recession. The constant increases in energy prices are like landmines that will blow up many companies as early as this winter. Companies in Germany, that is. So is Putin also to blame for Germany's decision to phase out Russian energy? Of course. They say in the West, he attacked Ukraine, leaving the Germans no choice. They can't buy bloody oil and gas. Okay, they can't, but then what are they complaining about? For their own choice? Especially since the main motivation for making the decision or to refuse our oil and gas, meaning Russia, was not moral reasons, but the desire to bring Russia to its knees. That is, to deal a crushing blow to the Russian economy, after which Russia would refuse the continuation of the military operation. No money, no military action, though the pragmatic Germans thought the pragmatic Germans, and they were wrong again, but not exactly. They have no money, only themselves. And the third reason is the third front, according to the German journalist Steingart. Quote, where the state budget was, now there is a deep crater. He says Putin destroyed the most important thing that distinguished our country from many of its neighbors, its stable financial system. It turns out it was not our achievement either. It's true that we were the first to impose sanctions, but that is also Putin's fault. With the shadow budgets and huge payouts that arise every now and then after the outbreak of hostilities in Ukraine, the government is trying to hide something from us. Here is the grim truth. Germans are not rich at all. We are in deep debt hole. Steingart is exaggerating, although he rightly calls the 200 billion euro earmarked to prop up the collapsing economy essentially a war loan. But that is nothing compared to the damage the German economy will suffer if trade with China collapses or if it closes. What does Putin have to do with it? No, the German journalist is not suggesting cutting German-Chinese ties. He's talking about their critical importance for Germany. But here lies the problem. Putin is working with our main trading partner in Asia, the People's Republic of China. The new superpower has taken his military adventures under its protection and is helping him break free from the Western sanctions regime. If we are not defeated on the first three fronts, the GDR will that is Germany, will lose its economic power on this part of the front. Because even though we see that China immediately restored the supply chains and technology disrupted by the Western gas, oil, and international payments, we are unable to react in a way that properly punishes China. Germany's car industry, chemical industries, and mechanical engineering are too dependent on China. China reliably supports Putin. So on the fourth Chinese front of Putin's war with Germany, Berlin has no hope because it cannot start a trade war with China. Fantastic logic. All that remains is to inform Putin that, as it turns out, he will crush the Germans with their dependence on the Chinese. A terrible secret can be revealed. The real threat to German-Chinese trade does not come from Russia, but from their main military ally, that is, their oldest partner. It's the United States that will do everything in its power to damage the economic ties between Germany and China. Does Germany see this, as well as the fact that the Anglo-Saxons have long created obstacles to European-Chinese relations as a whole? Or does Europe still think it can assert its right to trade with China? Well, they once thought the same way about relations with Russia. And now they pretend to see Putin as the main threat to the European Union, and this is the fifth and final front in the Focus article. Quote, by weakening the FRY, Putin is jeopardizing the most important project of the post-war period, the unification of Europe. Solidarity within Europe has weakened considerably as the Federal Republic, with an inflation rate of 10% and a significantly increased national debt, has to think more for itself during the recession. End quote. Many of our European friends see the Federal Republic as a big ATM machine, but the money runs out and the screen says in red letters, please choose a smaller amount to talk to your financial advisor. Well, that's easy. After all, we remember that Putin specifically targeted Germany in order to hurt the EU as a whole. Without a rich and growing Germany, there will be no European integration. That is a fact. But it's also a fact that Germany is shooting itself in the face today. All 5 fronts in Putin's war against Germany were opened by the Germans themselves because of their dependence on the Anglo-Saxons, because of geopolitical greed they submitted to Ukraine, or for some other reason. It's not so important anymore. All that matters is why they do what they do next, why they still have the chance to fail. This is from Steingart. Steingart, of course, suggests going all the way, that is, fighting geopolitically, not militarily, Russia all the way. Quote, only if we declare war on Putin, considering his actions in their entirety, will Germany have a chance. The country now needs a chancellor leader, but so far all we see are small potatoes. End quote. I don't even want to remember the previous chancellor military commander. The situation is radically different, although there is one common point: the prospect of Germany killing itself on the wall for the sake of the United Europe and the acquisition of Ukraine. And I've translated this from a Greek article, which was from the French article from Associated France Press. What do you think about all this? This makes sense now, doesn't it? The downfall of Europe, so that Europe can rely on China, the Russian-China Union. We're living in very strange and dangerous times. Please leave your comments. Thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support, and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.